Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Wildcard Devy Show. I am your host, Phil, as ever, joined by Jack. We are here for more Devy goodness. As if it's been 2 weeks since we last spoke to you about the college football landscape and Devy fantasy football. Jack, we need to talk to the people. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm very good. I can't believe it's been 2 weeks since I've seen your beautiful face, Phil, and got to chat about all the drama that's been going on over the last 2 weeks in college football. 2 weeks is too long to leave it to chat, but at least we can catch up with all the tape and observe everything that happens on the old X machine in the meantime.
That's it, mate. That's it. And there has been, you said it yourself, loads of drama, loads of big games, big performances. And then people on milk cartons going missing as well. Like we've seen big names also kind of, we've seen the good and the bad, and we'll kind of break it all down over the what we've seen over the last couple of weeks tonight. But Jack, there's only one place I want to start. Where do you think I, the Alabama fan, would like to start tonight's conversation, bud?
Um, Probably something mundane, a nice Kentucky win over Ole Miss. Is that where you want to start?
It's close. It's close. You know, you were in the right conference. You were in the right conference. Can we just get it out the way? Can we please just talk about that massive Alabama win over Georgia? And once I've finished gloating, obviously, we're calling it QB chaos because that's the big news in there too. High-profile 2025 QBs. Yeah, once I've got over bragging about like the result itself, like there was a lot to digest from a Devy point of view in that game.
There absolutely was. But first and foremost, what a game of football to watch as a Bama fan, as a Georgia fan, or as a neutral. I think that game had a little bit of everything, and obviously the gut punch at the end for the Bulldogs. How did you set me the scene, Phil? How did you watch this? What did you take in? What are your high points from the game?
Yes, so obviously, half midnight kickoff. So I planned accordingly and napped from around 11:30 up until kickoff. So I got a good hour's kip in before, and then it was downstairs on my own, trying not to wake the whole house, especially when we raced out to that lead in the first three possessions, three touchdowns in those first three possessions. I was working really hard to keep myself composed, and yeah, man, what a performance, like you say. And then the game itself for neutrals as well. I know I had a lot of people I know in kind of dynasty circles and other friendship groups who've kind of latched onto what we're doing here at Wildcard Devy and started listening like with a kind of passing interest and really to see what I'm on about all the time. And a load of them messaging me saying, "Are you going to be watching the game? Are you going to be? We're going to stay up and watch the game." And I felt like this was that type of game that you need to give a new audience to college football. And what a game it was for the neutrals. Some big time performances. And if we mention again that he's only 17, like Ryan Williams. We've written here Ryan freaking Williams. Like he is just special, absolutely special. And what a play! What a play to actually break the Bulldogs' hearts at the end there on that outrageous kind of catch, turn, pivot. It had it all. It had it absolutely everything. And what a way to finish the game. And as I've seen doing the rounds on X today, actually happened at 2:26 remaining on the clock. Of course, second and 26 was all the Crimson Tide needed in the national championship in 2018 for Tua to find Devonta Smith. So yeah, it was quite ironic that it happened at that moment as well.
Oh, look at you picking up the niche minutiae of the game and how that Lady Luck was smiling upon you, or Lady Fortune looking down on Alabama. For those who maybe haven't seen the game, Phil is obviously jubilant because Alabama did manage to beat Georgia. They raced out to a huge lead early on, and it really looked like the game was going to be dead and buried before Carson Beck and the Bulldogs really pulled off a very, very impressive comeback in the second half and actually took the lead, scoring some 4 scores in a row without Alabama registering a point before, as you say, Ryan Williams caught a catch down the sideline, having shaken and baked the DBs, pulled it in, stayed in bounds, ran down the sideline. And it was maybe the second play after Georgia had scored their touchdown to go ahead.
Yeah.
It really did feel like a dagger in the heart after all that work to get back in. And Alabama held on. And all the talk is about Ryan Williams, rightly so, for that move and how impressive he's been to start the season, but especially in the spotlight game. Like you say, this is a game that college fans all around the world obviously tuned into, but even your kind of casuals will have tuned in, like you say, to this game. And I'm so glad we got it early in the season. I mean, we'll get on to games to watch a little bit later in the show, but there are a ton of really good games to get your casual friends into to watch. But Ryan Williams did it in prime time on the biggest stage that college football has to offer at this moment in time, playoffs to come. So all the talk is about Ryan Williams. It feels like we've got a locked in round 1 wide receiver there already, only 4 weeks into his first college season. But I want to think and hear about a quarterback that is going to be coming out probably after this performance in the next draft class. How did Jalen Milroe get on in this game, and what have you seen from him under Kalen DeBoer, and what development have you seen that has impressed you?
Yeah, so listen, like we've spoken a lot about Jalen Milroe, and I've spoke about my frustrations from the tape last year, my frustrations as a fan sometimes in what we were seeing from him. Well, it's like night and day. He is on that 1-year superstar ascension program that some college guys seem to buy into, and he just looks so much smoother, calmer. The mechanics in his release are better. He's making smarter decisions, and what can you put it down to? It's got to be the Kalen DeBoer effect and that offensive system, and the work that they're putting in every day. And yeah, listen, right now, like I always said the potential was there. The potential was sky high. It just needed to click, and we needed consistency. And his last 2 performances, I would argue, maybe with the exception of Cam Ward, have been better than anybody else in the country. And if he can keep stacking games like that, his physical traits were always appealing and tantalizing anyway, and probably his most unique selling point in terms of his draft stock. But if he's combining that with better passing mechanics, better decision making, a quicker internal body clock, man, the sky's the limit. Like no, we've been saying all summer long, nobody had grabbed that QB1 job. Why can't it be Jalen Milroe based on what he's showing us at the moment?
I think you have hit the nail on the head there. Jalen Milroe is showing us everything that we wanted to see from him, and Kalen DeBoer has produced a first-round NFL quarterback out of a pretty beaten-up prospect in Michael Penix Jr. So to see him developing yet another quarterback who we had big question marks around as a Devy prospect, I've personally not been brave enough to pull the trigger on Jalen Milroe before this season, so I don't have any shares of him because he's got a super high ceiling but a super low floor. But if he continues to play like this, his floor is rising and his ceiling is staying sky high. I think there are maybe some overreactions at the moment saying that he's a locked-in top 3 draft prospect. I've seen that analysis out there, but I definitely think he is pushing day 1 draft capital for me now. The way that he's developing, what he's showing on the field, he's becoming a gamble that I think an NFL team is more willing to take. And therefore, if you have Jalen Milroe on your Devy roster, which a lot of people will because he's the Alabama quarterback, you are cashing in right now, and I don't honestly see that price going down. I think he is a great hold candidate because he is progressing in every area that we have said we want to see from him.
Yeah,
So
without a
great
doubt.
news.
Without a
Great
doubt.
news.
Isn't it just? Isn't it just? And so then you go to the other side of the coin. Like, can we talk Carson Beck for a few minutes?
Absolutely.
So obviously, they're in. I always said, like, because one of them's at Alabama, one of them's at Georgia, they were likely to end up in the same draft class. They're both big dogs in the SEC. That they would forever be kind of compared against each other, and that lazy analysis would always be made in a similar way to how Bryce was always going to be compared against CJ Stroud, etc., etc. And we see it happen. We see it happen all the time. When you've got prospects in the same class, they're inevitably going to get compared to each other. But these two guys were on very different pathways coming into the season. Carson Beck was viewed potentially as the safe floor prospect at QB1. And through the early weeks of the season, we mentioned our last podcast, he was kind of muddling through and doing what he had to do, been safe, not spectacular. This was the first time, like, a team punched Georgia in the mouth, and Carson Beck had to respond. And the results were fairly mixed, it's safe to say. Listen, he went 27 of 50. He put up a whopping 429 yards. But in there were 3 really costly interceptions. And I think perhaps worryingly, under pressure, some worrying decision making. Probably highlighted none more so than the final pick with the game on the line. Obviously, they were down in a hole, and it deserves mentioning. He deserves a lot of credit for leading the comeback and putting them in a position where they could win that game. But in that clutch moment with the ball in his hands, first down with 2 timeouts and 50 seconds on the clock, what is he doing forcing that ball into the back of the end zone? Like, throw it away, live to fight another day. You've got 3 more downs to try and win your team the game and complete a monumental comeback, which is absolutely going to elevate your draft stock to ridiculous heights. Like, and answer a lot of the questions that people might have had. Instead, we go away with more questions because he makes an awful decision. Let's just call it what it is. Listen, it's not going to ruin his draft stock. Of course it isn't. We saw in the comeback enough to know what he's put on tape and a lot of the good stuff he's done. But yeah, I just kind of feel like this hurts the potential ceiling of where he could go.
Yeah, I was so surprised by that final pick because it felt so out of character for what we know and love about Carson Beck, in that he is methodical. He will take what is given to him. And to be honest, that's what he did all game. So to throw that ball, it felt a little bit like he was trying to win the game for Georgia, and that is not what he is asked to do as that quarterback. I think in the game, his stats were pretty impressive. Like you say, but Alabama played a little bit soft coverage probably in that second half. They did apply a lot of pressure. So I feel like Carson Beck probably faced a whole load of immediate decisions and last minute checkdowns and confusion because of what Alabama threw at him. I think Kirby Smart even mentioned in his press conference, we haven't seen this from Alabama. So I feel like that part of his game, he did really well in terms of his decision making throughout the majority of the second half, but then almost went a bit glory ball at the end, trying to win the game and make it his moment, which feels very out of character. I do think Carson Beck will be fine. I think we saw a lot of good things out of him. And this Georgia team is clearly very talented, has athletes all over the field in every position, but they're not fully gelled, I think it's fair to say, especially on offense. I think Carson Beck's chemistry with his receivers is still growing. Georgia might not be as good as we think they are, and therefore Carson Beck is not going to be able to game manage in the same way that he has done over the last couple of years. And so I think we'll really see that tested. I think we'll see that QB1 anointing that he had out of a lack of options, if we're honest, before the season started. I think we'll see that taken away. But I do think he is a solid NFL prospect. He is someone that NFL front offices are going to really love because he is an intelligent, hardworking quarterback who does have a lot of experience and has a lot of wins under his belt. So I'm not panicking over Carson Beck, but I am questioning whether he's the top quarterback in this class anymore.
Yeah, absolutely fair. Absolutely fair. Where do you want to go next? I think I could talk about Bama all night, but
I bet you could. And when we start the Fantasy Wildcard Devy Bama show, you can host and guest on that one, Phil. But I think as we've started our quarterback chaos segment, let's touch on, it's not so much a Devy question or talking point, but there is some NIL drama going on right now, and the impact could be big in the future for our top Devy prospects. Now, if you are living under a rock, you may not have heard the name Matthew Sluka over the last 2 weeks. But if you have any kind of social media activity, you will have come across this story. So Matt Sluka, the quarterback at UNLV, or previously at UNLV, I don't know where his official status is right now, he has decided to redshirt, but he was the starting quarterback. And so he has decided to redshirt because NIL promises that were made to him have not been fulfilled. Now, those promises appear to have come from an assistant offensive coach rather than the head coach. Certainly appears that this has come without any consultation from UNLV's NIL collective, and therefore the boosters are saying there is nothing that they need to honor here. There's no contract. There's nothing written down that means they should have to pay Matthew Sluka. And so really this is a murky situation where Sluka has clearly been promised more than has been delivered, but by someone who didn't have the authority to deliver that promise anyway. But also Sluka didn't get anything in writing. His agent wasn't fully licensed in Nevada, so anything that was written down wouldn't have been legally binding anyway. And it is a bit of a mess. And so Sluka is going to redshirt. He's clearly going to look to transfer somewhere else because he's only got 1 year of eligibility left. So that's why he's preserving it with his red shirt. And I imagine he's not a Devy prospect. We don't think he's going to go to the NFL. He's going to try and find a transfer that means he can make some money next year. So I totally understand his position there. He feels a bit slighted, but also he wants to make the most of this NIL money that might be available for his 1 year. But it is a mess, isn't it?
Oh, without a doubt. And your mind starts to wander to how, and this is the first kind of one we've seen where that kind of wild west situation of it's all brand new. It's all brand new. Like Nick Saban foresaw it and said it'd need regulating, and pleaded with people, anybody that had listened, as to how. However, we're in uncharted waters, and until such time that I think it's interesting, first, with no respect to Mr. Sluka, that it is a UNLV quarterback with no potential NFL prospects. But what if this was a Shedeur Sanders? What if this was a high-profile Devy name and a name on the cusp of the NFL? What would be the ramifications for the player, for the draft stock, for the way they're viewed in the league? Listen, it's worrying. It's worrying. These are young people who will be getting advice from anybody that will shoot, comments at them. Who do you trust? Who do you listen to? How do you make smart choices that reflect well upon you as a young person? Because listen, I'd have been a dick if you'd have given me a shit ton of money at that age. Like, I'm probably still not going to be overly good with it now, but at that age, I would have made horrible decisions for an extra 20 quid. So what are these guys doing with an extra few thou being offered? Yeah, look, someone needs to step in and help these kids make smart decisions.
Yeah, there are a whole load of complications involved in terms of who is going to regulate this, because we don't have a centralized leadership of NCAA athletics anymore. We don't have a centralized. Well, in America, each state will have its own laws and its own rules, and to get all states to agree to the same conditions and outlining on this, when it becomes effectively employment, that's not going to happen. So I do believe that a solution will be found, because things like this will probably happen to a more high profile player. Maybe still not a high-end Devy prospect, because let's be honest, if this was Shedeur Sanders, Colorado would find the money. Like that, Sluka wasn't asking for loads and loads of money. He just, let's be honest, he wasn't really worth it. He's actually a pretty shoddy quarterback, with a less than 45% completion percentage through his 3 games at UNLV. So I can understand why they didn't really want to fork out that money. But it does shine a light on the murky side of NIL, or yet another murky side of NIL, because it's not been clean sailing so far. We'll see what happens.
That's it. So obviously, Mr. Sluka is looking at testing the transfer portal. We know the transfer portal has its good and its bad. There's one QB you want to talk about next, Jack, for whom the portal is looking really, really promising. Made a move in the offseason, and it's working out well so far. So tell me all about Kyle McCord and how he's playing at Syracuse.
Yeah, this is a brighter spark to talk about, because Kyle McCord is absolutely lighting it up in his newfound home at Syracuse, the zesty orange of Syracuse. So through 4 games, and there's just 4 games, Kyle McCord has thrown for just shy of 1,500 yards, 14 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, but we'll move on quickly from that, and a 69.6 completion percentage. So statistics are all up from his time at Ohio State in what was really an offense that wasn't tailored to Kyle McCord's strengths. But over in Syracuse, he looks really comfortable. He's looking decisive, and he's very composed in the pocket. This offense is built to his strengths, and he has protection to throw to his favorite target. He's found a favorite target in Trevor Pena, and he just looks so much better with probably the pressure of the Ohio State fan base off his back. And I think he has been treated a bit unfairly by Buckeyes fans. I think a break has been beneficial for both Ohio State and Kyle McCord, but I'm so glad to see him thriving in his new environment. And I think that's only going to continue. The schedule for Syracuse is really fun if you own Kyle McCord, or even if you just want to watch shootout potential games, especially this week. They're playing the previously mentioned UNLV, who are ranked number 25, but they are ranked in the top 25 in the AP poll. So that should be a fun game with a lot of points scored. UNLV put up over 60 points this weekend. So it's going to be a ding dong battle, I think. And Kyle McCord's going to have to keep up, which he's shown he can do. Rest of the stretch, you've got NC State, winnable. Pitt, winnable. Virginia Tech, toss up, probably go in as underdogs, but Virginia Tech aren't as strong as they have been over the last couple of years. Boston College, winnable. Cal, winnable. UConn, must win. And then you finish the season with Miami, which again, you're not likely to win that game, but it will be one where Kyle McCord will have to throw to keep up with that Hurricane offense. So I think this season could be really exciting, really fun for Concord, definitely redemptive for his Devy stock because it's really, really low. I think we saw so little of his talent at Ohio State as he kind of just fed the ball to the bigger superstars on the team, and he clearly wasn't very happy with that. So I think his Devy stock is going to start rising and rising, and I assume he's going to come back for another year. I don't think this year will be a one and done off to the NFL.
No, I'd say not.
So a strong 2024 season with that schedule and a nice 2025 could really repair some of that body damage that he took at Ohio State. So for him personally, I'm delighted. As a viewer, I'm excited to see him carve up some defenses. And as a Devy prospect, I'm very glad because I invested way too much when he got the starting gig at Ohio State. So fingers crossed that rises back up.
Yeah, absolutely. No, fair play to him. Like I said, I think you go into Ohio State, you follow the guys that he was asked to follow in Fields and then Stroud, like big shoes to fill. And listen, like we keep going back to this idea, these guys are young men. They don't all develop at exactly the same time and at exactly the same rate. And not all young people respond to exactly the same coaching. People will develop in their own time. And you're right. You're dead right. It's great to see him now thriving where he is. And yeah, good luck to him. I don't know what his long-term potential is as a Devy asset. But hey, you got to be, if you want to win the lottery, you got to buy a ticket, and he's certainly given himself another ticket and a chance to win.
Absolutely. And I think you talk about buying a ticket. This is a guy who is on the periphery of the Heisman invite, not to win. I don't think he's got any chance of winning the Heisman. Don't get me wrong, but an invite to New York is absolutely not out of the question with the start that he has made and the skill he is displaying. And if Syracuse keep winning, that buzz is going to grow in a field that isn't that strong. Like our Heisman field is pretty shallow right now. So if that can happen, that will again be great for his Devy stock. Get him on a Heisman watch list, and suddenly his Devy stock starts to rise and rise.
Absolutely.
So we shall see. Let's move on. We're still in our quarterback chaos segment, and we can't move through a quarterback segment without touching on Arch Watch. What is going on at Texas with Arch Manning?
Well, obviously, for those who didn't know, following our last podcast, Quinn Ewers suffered an abdominal injury that was supposed to hold him out for 1 to 2 weeks. I think, given the nature of the schedule, I think Texas made a business decision. I think had there been a more high-profile matchup in Week 5 than the tie against Mississippi State, in which I think you or I could have started quarterback for the Longhorns, Jack. I think Quinn would have played. But given the strength of the schedule and given the opponent, the decision was made to give Arch an extra run and to give Quinn Ewers just a little bit more time to heal up. And listen, in week 4, Arch played against Louisiana Monroe. There was the good, the bad, and the ugly expected of a freshman in his first start. The good bits looked very, very good, but there was certainly some things that needed some polish. And my God, what a difference a week makes, because the following week against Mississippi State, he looked outstanding. I think the thing that impressed me the most was his willingness to make time and create time for himself in the pocket, but take the hit. He knew the rush was coming. He could feel the rush. He stood in the pocket, showed bravery, showed maturity, took the shot, and threw for a touchdown. And listen, I posted the play on X, and it is well worth you taking a moment or two to find and go and have a look. It was an exceptional play and showed really good pocket presence and maturity, toughness, grit. listen, it's early days, and Sark is going to keep him on his toes. Sark, I think he completed 83% of his passes against Mississippi State. And he said in his post-match presser that Sark was in his ear giving him grief over the mic, saying it should be better. Well, I think Sark is pushing because he knows that this is an outrageously talented young man who can be better still. And Arch certainly he didn't seem bothered by it or fazed by it. You know, he wasn't crying about it. It was challenge accepted. And look, there's no QB controversy. We've said it before. It's Quinn Ewers' job this season. You know, as long as he's fit and healthy, and I think they've made a smart decision in letting him get fit and healthy before some of Texas's bigger tests come further down the schedule. But my God, the future's bright. And God forbid, and you shouldn't wish injury on anybody, but if something more serious were to happen to Quinn Ewers, and touch wood, it doesn't, I think we've seen that they would be absolutely fine and then some if Arch had to play for an extended period.
What great news for our Longhorn listeners. I mean, Quinn Ewers doesn't have a great track record with injuries, so there is every chance that we see Arch again this season through necessity rather than through garbage time play. But I just want to touch back on what you said about him kind of taking on that constructive feedback. And Arch Manning really does seem like a very level-headed young man, someone who is desperate to learn and grow and succeed. He is in a privileged position where NIL is not his main priority, to put it kindly. He is there to learn and develop and grow as a quarterback for this level, to lead Texas when it is his team, but also to become an NFL quarterback for, in his mind, decades to come. So I don't think he's going to be fazed by that criticism or that feedback. It's something that is really encouraging to see. And you mentioned before we started recording, there are indications that Arch might not come out in his first year of eligibility because he wants to run this Texas offense and make it his team and learn and grow as much as he can in college before he is thrust into the NFL limelight. So I'm really encouraged by the old man brain that seems to be operating between those young shoulders.
So it's almost like he's got really good advice from family that have been there and done that, isn't it?
Yes.
What he also has that perhaps some of those relatives didn't have is a set of wheels if he needs to vacate the pocket and run. If his uncles had that type of mobility, they'd have been even more frightening than they were.
Absolutely, which is also perfect for today's NFL. Maybe not so much for Peyton and Eli. I can't even picture Eli running anymore.
Out of interest, Jack, do you have any shares
of Arch Manning? I do not, unfortunately. I play in a lot of leagues where he was snapped up while still in high school because the name was there. He was obviously going to be picked very highly. And if I'm honest, I didn't even think about taking a high school player. But even if I had, that's an extra year to wait on a talent. So no. Yourself?
None, absolutely none. And after watching this last couple of weeks, particularly after watching Saturday, that irks me slightly. But it's a similar type thing. Like he perhaps wasn't drafted as a high school player. However, when I looked at the board in drafts his freshman season, he was going ludicrously early. Based on name alone at that point. And now listen, look, we knew he was going to be good. Of course we did. We could put on the high school tape and we could see he was a talented boy. But I felt that he was being overdrafted. And for me, I'm a value guy. I'm a mathematician at heart. Like I want to get as much value out of any potential pick as possible rather than just take shots. And you know, there's perhaps a trade-off, and maybe this is a good topic for another show, but maybe there is a trade-off to get into between just going and getting your guy in Devy, and whatever you perceive value to be, and where that kind of balance lies. Because I feel like I've missed out on a great one, and it's going to sting for some time because his price is only going to go up if you want him.
Mm-hmm.
We said it, didn't we? We said it in the summer. The second he steps foot on the field, the value was going to go up, and lo and behold, that has happened because of the way he's performed this week. So, yeah, it sucks, but you make those decisions at the time based on the information available to you.
And I think if you compare, I'm sure in your ultimate wisdom, Phil, if you compare it to who you did take, you'll be very happy because you'll have, of course, taken someone with a solid NFL future, probably earlier than Arch Manning. But then again, if you are the one who took Arch, you are happy because you're playing the longer game, but there is guaranteed return on investment with Arch Manning. And so you're pretty happy whether you keep him or you sell him. You've played the long game, you've played it well. Hopefully your NFL team has survived and won championships in the meantime, and you had the luxury to play that long game.
Fingers crossed, eh?
Fingers crossed. Right. You hungry? Phil?
Yeah, always. How did you know?
Would you like some Kentucky Fried Rebels for tea tonight?
Oh, I see what you did there. I see what you did. So for anybody not up to speed, there was an all SEC clash this weekend past between Kentucky and the Ole Miss Rebels. Now, Kentucky are perhaps underrated SEC team at the moment, flying under the radar, kind of largely going unnoticed. Not much was expected of them, but in recent weeks now, over the last couple of weeks, they took Georgia to the wire and then absolutely played out of their skin against Ole Miss. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about what you saw.
Yeah, I saw a Kentucky team that is really rising to the occasion because, like you say, they've been off the boil in their other games, but against the big boys, against Georgia, and at the time number 6 ranked Ole Miss, that defense in particular really stepped it up and gave Carson Beck and then Jackson Dart a tough ride, a tough afternoon in some less favorable weather conditions. It wasn't great, which always helps in a low scoring affair, but Ole Miss have been scoring a ridiculous amount of points up until now. So to limit the Rebels to 17 points is a master defensive plan. And I think all credit to the Kentucky defense, but also to the coaching staff in their game plan for this one, because Jackson Dart wasn't bad. He didn't play badly. So big sigh of relief. Jackson Dart is okay. His Heisman campaign is probably still on. He is okay with his draft stock.
Yeah, Kentucky, I think so.
Yeah. I think so. Kentucky made this a fight, a real mud fight. They had 7 tackles for loss. They sacked Dart 4 times. They won the turnover battle. I mean, only 1-0, but in those conditions, great to not turn the ball over at all. They were 3 for 3 in the red zone, 3 for 3 on 4th down. So they kept Dart off the field and they limited his options when he was on it. So it was a great performance from Kentucky. Jackson Dart still managed to feed his number 1 target, who we'll get onto in a second. But Dart wasn't able to spread the ball around in the same way. He wasn't able to use his legs in the same way to keep Ole Miss moving. And unfortunately, they just came off the field too many times. And ultimately, it came down to a last-second field goal to tie the game, take it to overtime, which was hooked quite badly to the left. And Dart wasn't kicking it, so don't worry. That's not affected his draft stock. But a real big win for Kentucky. Yeah. No real Devy impact there from Kentucky, but there was a sparkling light. And of course, that was your guy, Trey Harris.
Absolutely. So yeah, just to kind of summarize on Jackson Dart, first of all, like Jackson Dart still managed to pass for he completed 67% of his passes when he was on the field. But you're right, the game plan to keep him off the field, rinse the clock, be stingy with the time of possession battle, really worked to Kentucky's advantage, and it just gave Jackson Dart no real room to go. However, that wasn't going to stop Trey Harris. Trey Harris is on an absolute tear. Trey Harris had 11 receptions on 15 targets. He had 176 yards and caught Jackson Dart's only touchdown pass of the game. Listen, that excuse me. We kind of have this ongoing battle, don't we, between what the tape shows us and stats. And again, where's that trade-off? Where's that value? What do you value in terms of your projections and where you think someone's going to go draft-wise for Devy Capital? There are some elements of Trey Harris's game that are lacking, right? He is not the most refined route runner. He is not the most precise technician. However, he has good hands and he is fast. He's explosive. He creates space. And if you can cope with some of the technical misgivings and hope that they can kind of upskill him once he arrives at the league, like he's a ball of clay that can really, really be molded into something potentially dangerous at the next level. There was one pass from Jackson Dart where Harris didn't haul it in. I mean, he hauled in 11 of them, for goodness sake. But one of the 4 targets he didn't manage to bring in was nothing on Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart put the ball in a good window and he dropped it short in the anticipation that Trey Harris would come back to the ball. And Trey Harris just didn't read it. And that's that kind of refinement that at the next level you would want to see improve for him to be as good as he possibly can be. But yeah, listen, right now he's performing. If you had to name the kind of top 5 draft eligible receivers at the moment, some of the names that we've been really high on in Devy circles are falling, and Trey Harris is producing. Like, you could make a really, really good argument for him. So yeah, I'm on the bandwagon. I'm leading the march. The fan club has officially started. Come to me for membership.
I was going to say, you're not on the bandwagon. You are driving that bandwagon. All credit to you. And I think Trey Harris is really pushing that first round wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, look, last year 5 went. And if five receivers went in the first round last year, and we're talking about guys like, respectfully, again, no slight and no knock on him, but Ricky Pearsall going at the end of the first, like, why can't Trey Harris be viewed in a similar light, if not as a better prospect? Like, no one was talking about Ricky Pearsall as anything more than a potential top to mid day 2 type guy. Then all of a sudden, the Niners see something in him and make that pick at 30, 31, I think it was. Yeah, listen, why can't Trey Harris fall within that same kind of area? I mean, working on the assumption that Kansas City is somehow going to be down there again, they're going to need another shot at another roll of the dice potentially. Yeah, like, why not? Why not let me speak that one into existence?
Yeah, you can dream. You can dream. Who knows? Let's see what the next few weeks bring with their trade possibilities, etc. As Devontae Adams, at this moment in time, appears to be seeking a trade. Just to give a bit of credit to Dane Key, I said Kentucky had no Devy prospects in this game. Dane Key actually is one of those sleeper guys that gathered a bit of hype 2 years ago and has been a pretty consistent performer for Kentucky. He had 8 receptions for 105 yards and a touchdown in this one. Someone who could really get back on sleeper circles if he continues that level of production. You've obviously got Barry and Brown there too, who was more than a sleeper, but he has since fallen asleep and is yet to produce to the potential that we really hoped he would. But there's a couple of receivers there to keep your eyes on if you're going deep in your watch lists. Okay, well, quarterbacks, tick. We're going to move on to a really exciting element of the show that we've kind of teased a few times. We've spoken a lot about the 2025 running back class. And it is the question that I hear most often when people ask me about Devy. It's which running backs are going to come and fill this void, because my NFL roster has nobody on it. Old, aging, not productive enough. Unless you've got,
Absolutely.
well, I was going to say unless you've got Christian McCaffrey, but he is really hurting a lot of my dynasty teams right now. So we've gone away and separately ranked our top 10 2025 eligible running backs. Now, these are guys that we think are going to declare for the 2025 draft. So there are a few guys that we won't mention because we think they're going to come back to school. And there's a few guys who we won't mention because they are no good anymore. So, Phil, shall we do this one by one? You hit me with your number 10, and I'll hit you with my number 10, and we'll go
Cool.
up from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so at number 10, I have gone with Tennessee running back Dylan Sampson. Lightning in a bottle. My big question right now is he's certainly producing at Tennessee, but is he a beneficiary of the system, or is he truly an elite back that deserves to be higher up the list? I suppose time will tell. But right now, he deserves to make the cut in the top 10 against some kind of bigger names that maybe I've been attached to previously.
And we agree, because I have Dylan Sampson ranked at number 9. He's someone we touched on a little bit in our Twitter coverage as a stock up player, someone who's really taken advantage of a lack of competition, as Cam Seldon still appears to not be quite right. I think he is back on the field now, but Dylan Sampson has made that his job. Someone who is a little bit smaller than your traditional, or certainly the rest of this 2025 running back class, but someone who is really producing, and an interesting, exciting prospect who at the moment looks to have day 2 draft capital locked down, really. So my number 10 is Jadon Blue out of Texas, currently resting an injury, but someone who has taken that, another guy like Cam Seldon, like Dylan Sampson, who has taken an injury plagued backfield and made it his own to start the season. Someone who is really good at catching passes out of the backfield and has a really high recruiting pedigree. He just kind of got over recruited with CJ Baxter coming in and Jadon Blue having an injury last season. So he's someone with all the talent, all the pedigree, and the platform for the rest of the season to show what he's all about. And I think if that stays strong, he will come out in this 2025 class, because really he could be, he's at number 10 in my rankings, but he could be up as high as 5.
Yeah, interesting. So for me, I'll be honest, Jadon Blue missed the cut. He was in a list of 5 honourable mentions that I wrote down. The pass catching is what he should do best. Yet a couple of the drops this weekend, and I realised there's a lot more than the week just gone to base it on. A couple of those drops worried me. They're the type of grabs that, if that's going to be your calling card, you should be making. I worry about how he projects. As you know, okay, gone are the days of the every down back, unless you're truly special. But I just worry, what type of role he'd carve out at the next level, based on what we've seen so far. You are right; the opportunity is great. He's playing in a great team this year, so maybe as the season progresses, he can convince me to bump him a little bit higher. But right now, just misses the cut for me. Number 9. Sorry, go on, Jack.
Yeah, I was going to say that's very fair. And I have to admit, I haven't caught up on the Texas Mississippi State highlights because there are lots of other good games, and Mississippi State are rubbish. So fair criticisms. But in this range, it's a bit of a wild card, isn't it? Like Jadon Blue is a wild card. He's someone who could be a really reliable third down back, in which case he's got to be super productive with his hands. Otherwise, we're not going to see him on our rosters. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. So number 9 for me, I've gone with a really high-profile name, who we spoke about on the last show. And listen, I think he deserves a place in the top 10 at the moment. But it should be noted it is only just by the skin of his teeth, and that's Ollie Gordon. And I'm basing that's more on what we've seen from him previously than perhaps what he's shown us this season. I think if he can drop the pounds, I think if he can get back to where he was at the end of last season, he can be a workhorse. And it might be volume and production that gets him there. But I can't help but just get this idea of him replacing a bell cow for a team that uses a bell cow like a Dallas Cowboys, and him going on to have a fruitful career as a pro. Don't mean I have to love him or particularly like what I've seen from him, but right now, yeah, he's got the numbers from last season to keep him around over some of the other names at the moment.
Yeah, he has the tank of reserve gas, doesn't he?
That's it.
That puts him in a good place. But this season, we've touched on it already. This season's been really disappointing. His production and his vision, as well as that kind of losing a bit of burst with what we assume is added muscle weight. And he's dropped out of my top 10 entirely, actually. But he's a good back, like you say. He has the potential for he has a super high ceiling as an NFL player.
Absolutely. Do you want to go number 8?
I'll go number 8, and I've got another one of the bigger names, Omarion Hampton, there at number 8. He's done nothing wrong this season. He's producing exactly as he did last season, potentially even more so. He is the North Carolina offense, and I think he is taking a bit of a hit because of that. Some of those explosive runs are being limited because the opposition know that they need to stack the box because they're going to hand the ball off to Omarion Hampton, 20, 25, nearly 30 times. He had 29 touches this weekend. So what the offense are going to try and do. They're going to try and feed Omarion Hampton. He's got less opportunity for the highlight plays this season so far, but he is putting up really good numbers. You got 658 rushing yards, 6 touchdowns. He's got 17 targets and he's caught 13 of those, which is great because that's something we didn't really see. And unfortunately, no receiving touchdowns, but he's averaging 8.2 yards per catch. So it's pretty good.
Solid.
Pretty solid.
We are kind of at the extent where he is so much of their offense that he's probably going to start throwing those passes to himself as well. Number 8, I went with the jack of all trades that we've mentioned loads of times on this show. Someone that seems to have been around on the Devy scene forever, in Devin Neal. I wanted to have him in. I would love to justify putting him higher because I really like him. And if that doesn't tell you anything about how good we think this class is, then that should be it. The fact that Devin Neal is at number 8, because Devin Neal is going to land on an NFL roster and make a fantasy owner and an NFL team happy for a long, long time because he can do a bit of everything. He is absolutely flying the flag for me in my college football fantasy league at the moment. He's been a valuable and well-liked team member. And yeah, listen, I couldn't have this list and not have him in. Yet right now, based on what we're seeing from some of the others and perhaps tread on the tires, etc., I couldn't really justify putting him higher as much as I'd like to.
Fair enough. I do have Devin Neal a couple of spots higher. He's sitting there at number 6 for me. Like you say, we've seen the whole package from Devin Neal. Unfortunately, Jalen Daniels has not come back from his injury as the guy we all probably hoped he would be. And that again, and Devin Neal's another guy playing in an offense that's a bit more predictable than we hoped. So his 2024 season might not be as productive as we really want, but I think like you say, he's going to make a team very happy. I feel like a bit like Braylon Allen is suddenly making NFL dynasty owners pretty happy with his role.
Absolutely.
I think Devin Neal's going to be a guy that gets drafted in the same kind of range in the NFL draft, but only because of the competition around him.
Cool. Number 7, Jack.
Number 7, someone very much on a par with Devin Neal is DJ Giddens from Kansas State, a running back who this weekend went absolutely ballistic.
Bonkers.
Absolutely smashed it. He's a really fun running back to watch. He is not afraid of contact with anybody, and he will lower that shoulder and try and run through you. So, yeah, really fun guy. Was lesser known to me, to be honest, before last season. And I think he's still really underrated, someone that you can get at a value right now, and having a really productive season.
Cool. Well, I mean, I'm going to surprise people. I have gone with Nick Singleton at number 7. Listen, he isn't out the doghouse yet. However, he is working his way out of it. He's working his way out of it by showing us the growth that we wanted to see, and starting to answer some of those questions. He had another score at the weekend on an exciting kind of outside run. And he's just making better decisions when he's got the football in his hands. And as long as that happens, we know all about his athleticism. We know all about the potential upside. And I'm here for it. Like, look, he deserves to be on this list from the way he's performed this season and the way he started to answer those questions. I'm not putting him any higher than 7. He can like being number 7 and the fact that he's made my list.
He can be grateful for it, is what you're
saying.
Damn
right you can. Damn right you can.
I think Singleton's redemption arc is coming on strong, and Penn State are starting to run the ball really well, which is great news for them going into conference play in the Big Ten, because they're going to need to, especially if they're going to live up to their top 10 ranking right now. I think the other thing that is really in Singleton's favor is how Penn State get their running backs in particular. I mean, all players, but particularly their running backs ready for the combine. We have seen Penn State running backs go off with some incredible athletic testing at the combine, and Singleton is at kind of 225 pounds, so that they'll make sure he doesn't put on too much more weight than that. And I think he will run in the 4.3s at the combine. I think he will be a real riser at the combine for dynasty players. And I've got Singleton up at number 4, and in this second tier of running backs, all of which, now I don't think all 4 of them will, but any one of these top 4 could be a first round NFL draft candidate. So I've got him up at 4 because that ceiling is so high, and I want to believe it.
Fair.
I want to believe it.
Keep rolling. So number 6.
6, we've touched on Devin Neal already. So Devin Neal's my number 6. So we've touched on him. How about you?
Yeah, again, we've already mentioned, I think he was your number 8. I've got Amarian Hampton at 6. I do feel like, I mean, you've covered everything. Like, he's their offense, and it's perhaps painting him in a slightly more negative light because he's working so frigging hard with the amount of touches he's getting, that we've just got to hope he gets to the end of the season healthy. Like, they really are putting an awful lot on him, and he's handling it superbly. You just fear that kind of tiredness is going to kick in. Like, with the workload he's getting right now, this off season is like no other off season that they have coming up as well. They will go straight into training for the combine, and then go straight into rookie mini camp, and then straight into training camp. It's going to be a long time before the guy gets a break. But I just wanted to put on note that the talent is without a shadow of a doubt there. So yeah, number 6 for me.
Great. And follow us up straight on to number 5.
Yep. Okay. So my guy, he won't be making a lot of top 10 lists at the moment, but I guarantee you he will come at the end of the season. And that is Kyle Monangai at Rutgers. Listen, the guy, was he just stats? Was he just running over some poor defenses? Look, the more you watch him, like, he's developing as a runner. He's developing as a runner. He's not just that bowling ball, skittling his way through things anymore. He's making smart decisions, and he will run you the chuff over if he gets a chance as well. I love him. I absolutely love him, and I'm careful to put him any higher because I don't want people taking him from me in any drafts where I don't already have him.
Yeah, I totally appreciate that. It's really nice that we actually get to see Monungai and his talent, because Rutgers are not playing from behind every single week as they have been over the last 5-6 years.
4-0.
They are 4-0. They are rolling. Indiana and Rutgers are a couple of forces in the Big Ten, so keep your eye out on both of those. But yeah, Monungai, love him. He's not quite made my top 10, but it's because Phil paid me to keep him out and not raise his draft stock too high. My number 5 is Trevor Etienne out of Georgia, someone who we have seen it put it all together in his previous spot, and then we're looking for that super special smattering of stardust. That was a lot of S's all at once. Now that he's at the Bulldog program, he is going to have the opportunity with some big games coming up to be the difference maker. Someone who we have seen has the pedigree to be a top NFL running back. Similar to Devin Neal, he has the whole package. He can do everything, or we just really want to see it in his new landing spot in Georgia.
Yep, absolutely. That's quite a nice segue because he was my number 4. So we've got a very similar outlook on him. I've got nothing more to add. I think you've covered that fantastically well there, mate.
Perfect. So we can move on to 3 because my 4 was Nicholas Singleton. At 3, I have had to drop Trevion Henderson from my number 1 spot down to number 3, and it hurts. It hurts me to do so, but and this is no slight on Henderson because he is an incredibly talented running back, and I think he arguably has the best chance to be the number 1 running back taken by the NFL because his all-round skill set is exactly what an NFL team is looking for if he can stay healthy and if he can put it on display for the rest of the season. Unfortunately, his production in 2024 so far on a very evenly split backfield just doesn't compare to Quinshon Judkins at the moment. And so I can't put him above Judkins, especially with the pass catching that Judkins is starting to show us.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. Makes complete sense. Listen, I've got him in exactly the same spot. And it very much ties in line with what you said. Like, it's nothing that he's done wrong. It is just the fact that these other 2 names have elevated themselves into such a position where I can't justify putting Henderson above them anymore. So yeah, Henderson at 3. I would be amazed if we've got the only way this can stop now is if your Ohio State bias has shone through. I've gone Quinshon Judkins at number 2. Trevion Henderson's Ohio State running mate. I've loved the kid since he was an incoming freshman at Ole Miss. He obviously broke onto the scene and had a couple of incredible years setting SEC rushing records for a freshman. And then somewhat surprisingly, as we've mentioned previously, decided that Ohio State would be his move in the portal this year. It is absolutely serving him well because he looks like an absolute superstar. Yeah, and he's been my number 1 all the time to this point. However, I just can't justify it anymore, and we'll come to that in a moment or two. But what have you done, Jack? Has your Homer bias shone through, or have you stayed true to your Devy evaluation roots?
Well, you could say I've not fallen for recency bias, and I have kept Quinshon Judkins at number 1 because I think the homer in me is really a coin flip between Quinshon Judkins and Ashton Jonty. And right now, Jonty is the hot name, but we'll get on to him in a minute. Judkins has the whole package, and he is someone you just love to root for, an under recruited running back, 3-star prospect, going to Ole Miss, absolutely lit up the SEC. And I think that strength of competition is what is edging Judkins still to be number one for me. There is no denying the Judkins' production in the SEC and in his start to life in the Big Ten. He is thriving under Chip Kelly, and I think the Ohio State running game is really starting to elevate itself this season now that Chip Kelly's in there as kind of a luxury coach, throwing off the head coach shackles and just coaching ball. And Judkins is really benefiting. He's showing good hands at the backfield with his pass catching. He's showing long speed. He took a 75-yard run to the house against Michigan State this weekend, and he wasn't even close to being caught, which that's something that I hadn't seen too often on tape. That long speed was great to see. So Judkins at 1 or 2, we love him. And it means we could do a straight up swap if we had them in our 5-yard Devy, in our fantasy wildcard Devy league. But alas, I have neither.
So like my number one's Ashton Ginty. Like I said, Judkins has been a favourite of mine all the way through this process. How Alabama ever let him get out of state as an Alabama native is absolutely beyond me. But hey, Ashton Ginty, listen, he is explosive, and what I'm looking for if I'm going to use a high Devy or high rookie draft pick in particular, if I'm a dynasty player, is I am looking for explosion and game-changing plays, and this kid is full of them. Again, maybe I've gone for it because I don't have a single share. Maybe that's why. Maybe it's that kind of envy that has propelled him to number one. But yeah, contact balance, vision, speed, just explosion. And we always say like this game should be fun. And if you have Ashton Ginty on your roster, you are having fun.
Or there's something wrong with you.
Absolutely. Now, look, this is really interesting because we've just rattled off 10 names. There was a lot of crossover, obviously, some not. But one of the things that stands out for me is a name that didn't make the list, or a couple of names that perhaps didn't make the list. And the first one that really stands out to me is Damian Martinez. Really well liked. I liked a lot of the tape that I watched this summer from his time at Oregon State. Obviously transferred to Michigan, Miami this offseason. And it just hasn't worked. It's just not worked. And I wondered what your thought process was for leaving him off your list, Jack.
Yeah, he's just off. I would have him at number 11, I think, in my list. And I feel like I watched a little bit of Miami from Friday night, Saturday morning, and he's starting to find his feet in this Hurricanes offense a little bit more than the first 4 or 5 weeks have shown us. So I'm not super worried about Martinez. I think his profile is really appealing. I think he has a strong track record. I think he's going to be okay, but yeah, there's no denying he's not quite at 100% of his effectiveness right now.
Yeah, I think the worrying thing for me is just the way that Miami are using their room of running backs. And they do appear to be sharing it out amongst the room. It is a true committee rather than him being the lead dog and being able to show us what we'd really want to see. And that affects others as well. Going into 2026, I'm a big Mark Fletcher fan. And then obviously you've got Jordan Lyle there as an incoming freshman. Like they're sharing the work between them. Much to Martinez's kind of disadvantage, I suppose.
Yeah, it's to his detriment, isn't it? But I think this is the Cam Ward year. And I think, unfortunately, Martinez has transferred in at the same time, maybe thinking that he'd be the main guy on this offense. but Cam Ward is that guy. So we'll see.
Absolutely.
He's also a questionable, could come back for another season, Martinez.
Yeah, of
so,
course.
So let's see.
So look, to give you an idea of how deep this class is, and I'm ever so conscious of time, there are loads of names that we could still absolutely rattle on about. But some of the names that we have not included in our top 10, that we've not yet mentioned: Jordan James, top rushers from this season: RJ Harvey, Caleb Johnson at Iowa, Darius Taylor at Minnesota, Desmond Reed, Khalil Mullings, the breakout running back who's dominating the room at Michigan, Le'Veon Moss at Texas A&M, Jam Miller, Alabama, Jeremiah Love at Notre Dame, Anthony Hankerson, Kwali Conley, Jaden Ott at Cal. Like, look, we've just named you 20 plus NFL caliber running backs that are all available in this draft class. The talent is coming. The flood is coming.
It is. It absolutely is coming. They're not every single one of those names. Obviously, Khalil Mullings not 2025 eligible, but the majority of these guys are. And there is so much production there in that first group. He's got Bishal Tutin in there as well at Virginia Tech. I think he might be leading the league in rushing. It's absolutely ridiculous how many talented running backs there are here. And I think we're seeing the funnel end of the COVID eligibility changes, and I think that's probably why we're getting so many running backs in this year, because lots of guys have come back for a super senior year, and the NFL is all the better for it, because like we said at the top of the running back section, we're crying out for a fresh wave of running backs for our dynasty rosters. So lots of good names to keep an eye on that people will touch on at later points in the season, I'm sure. Especially if they're still Devy relevant going forward.
That's it. So listen, Jack, I'm ever so conscious of time. Like, normally we love to play a bit of Sell Keep Acquire to end these shows, but I feel like we've spent that much time kind of really getting our teeth into those 2025 running backs that maybe we hold those guys for another couple of weeks, like keep people waiting.
You read my mind. You read my mind. They're great ones. So we'll get you those next time. We'll end with a few good games to watch. So there are 3 blockbuster weeks coming up. And of course, we will try and see you in between then and week 8. But week 6, we've got Mizzou at Texas A&M in the 5 p.m. slot. That's a good one to watch. Luther Burden, see how he gets on in SEC play. Auburn at Georgia in the 8:30 window. Ole Miss at South Carolina as well. There it would be interesting to see how a wounded Georgia take retribution on a poorly Auburn. That could be a slacking. Then at 12:30 a.m., you've got Clemson at Florida State and Michigan at Washington. That last one in particular looks really exciting. Week 7, you want to give us your highlights?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got Ohio State at Oregon. How about that for a daddy of a matchup? You've got Penn State at USC. You've got the Red River Shootout, Texas and Oklahoma. That looks like it could be a one-sided absolute whooping in the favor of the Longhorns, the way Oklahoma look at the moment. But you never know. Those games.
You never know. You never know in that game.
And then Ole Miss and LSU. It was an absolute barnstormer of a game last year. Almost 100 points of offense in that one. And there's nothing I've seen from either of those sides this year that says it could be anything different.
It's going to be mega. It's going to be mega.
Week 8, Jack.
Yeah, week 8. We obviously hope to see you before then, but we would be amiss to not mention Alabama at Tennessee, Georgia at Texas on the same day. And you've also got Miami at Louisville, which is a big game in the ACC, potentially a title rematch coming up between those two later on in the season. So it'll be really interesting that week 8. But of course, we hope to see you well before then.
Absolutely. So that just leaves us to kind of say, summarize today's show. We've tried to bring you up to date on some of the big QB chaos and the QB happenings around the college football and Devy landscape. We have talked to you about 2025 running backs and just how deep that class is. And if you've not yet started grinding the tape on those prospects, we've given you the names to go away and find. That just leaves me to say thank you for tuning in. Just make sure, again, as always, our plea for you to follow us and subscribe on X and YouTube at Wildcard Devy, and then the rest of the gang who are doing an awesome job over at Fantasy Wildcard. Thank you again for dropping in and sharing some Devy goodness with us. Jack, good luck to you and your good wife in the coming weeks. We can't wait to hear from you and let us know how you're all getting on. A new Ohio State fan, hopefully the next time we meet.
Absolutely.
All right, man.
A new Ohio State player.
There you go.
Coming your way.
Dream big.
Dream big.
All right, man. You take care.
Peace.